Money does not change who you are. It removes the excuse to keep hiding who you already were, and that is a far more uncomfortable fact than anyone selling you a lifestyle wants you to hear. Psychologists who study financial behavior have a name for what happens in your head at the bottom of the income ladder. They call it money avoidance, and it does not look like denial in the dramatic sense. It looks like not opening the banking app for 4 days straight. It looks like knowing with total certainty roughly how much you have without ever checking the exact number, because the exact number feels like a verdict rather than information. At this level, every financial decision gets processed by the same part of the brain that once decided whether a sound in the dark was a threat. Researchers call it financial vigilance when it works for you and hypervigilance when it starts working against you, and at the bottom is almost always the second one. You are not bad with money. You are a nervous system doing exactly what it evolved to do under scarcity, which is treat every dollar like the last one, because for a long stretch of your life, it sometimes was. Here is the part worth arguing about in the comments before you keep watching. Financial psychologists have found that this scarcity wiring does not disappear the moment your income rises. It lingers. People who grew up poor and later became comfortable often still flinch at price tags that no longer threaten them. If that describes you, is not a character flaw. Is evidence your brain believed you for years, and beliefs do not update on the same schedule as bank statements. Something shifts at the next level. Not in the amount coming in what the money is quietly asked to prove. Once income becomes steady enough to stop being an emergency, a different money script tends to take over. One researchers call money status, the belief, often unspoken, that net worth equals self-worth, that the car, the watch, the neighborhood are not preferences but evidence. For someone who has only just escaped survival mode and is terrified of sliding back into it, the purchases at this level are rarely about the object. They are about having something to point to. The rule of this level is simple, and almost nobody likes hearing it. The louder the proof, the newer the confidence behind it. Climb one level higher, into what researchers who study high earners actually measure, and the picture changes in a way that surprises most people. A study comparing top earners to other financially comfortable clients found something specific. The highest earners showed less money avoidance, less money worship, the belief that more money would finally solve everything emotionally, along with higher financial knowledge, and a far stronger likelihood to credit their success to their own drive to build wealth rather than to luck or circumstance. In plain language, they stopped treating money as either a monster to avoid or a god to appease, and started treating it as a tool they were reasonably good at using. A bad month at this level no longer collapses the whole structure underneath it the way it once did. It becomes a data point instead of an emergency, simply because there is finally enough distance between one setback and total exposure. If you have made it this far, subscribe now, because the next levels are where the psychology stops resembling anything you have been taught to expect, and where most financial content simply stops looking because the story gets quiet instead of dramatic. At Real Wealth, something counterintuitive happens that researchers keep finding. Financial stress, measured directly, tends to drop. Life satisfaction and financial satisfaction both tend to rise. Loss aversion, the tendency to feel a loss roughly twice as intensely as an equivalent gain, measurably softens, and the sense of control over one's own outcomes measurably strengthens. This is not simply because there is more money. It is because the entire relationship to money restructures itself. Spending stops being reactive, an attempt to soothe an old fear, and becomes closer to allocation, a calm, almost administrative decision about where resources should go. People at this level frequently describe checking their accounts less often, not more, because the checking itself was always a symptom of uncertainty, and the uncertainty is largely gone. There is a well-documented quirk in how humans perceive income versus wealth that explains a lot of the confusion people have about this stage. Studies have shown that receiving the exact same total amount of money in smaller, more frequent installments makes people feel wealthier and spend more freely than receiving it as a single lump sum, even though the number is identical. This is why someone with a modest but frequent paycheck can feel richer and spend more carelessly than someone sitting on a much larger balance they rarely touch. Perception, not principle, drives the behavior. At the top of the ladder, people tend to think less like a paycheck and more like a balance sheet, and that single shift changes almost everything downstream of it. The rule at this level is the one that finally makes sense of everything before it. Once money stops being asked to prove something or fix something, it stops being able to control you. At the furthest point researchers have actually studied, something else emerges, something closer to what psychologists call hedonic adaptation. The upgrades stop producing the emotional spike they once did. A better car feels like a car. A bigger house feels like a house. The nervous system, remarkably efficient, recalibrates to any new baseline within weeks and quietly starts asking for the next one, unless something interrupts the pattern. Research on well-being and income has repeatedly found that more money continues to correlate with greater day-to-day ease and reduced stress, but the emotional return per additional dollar shrinks the further up the ladder you go, especially once basic security and freedom of choice have already been secured. The money still helps. It simply stops being the main character. What replaces it, in the people psychologists have studied at this level who report the highest well-being, is not more accumulation. It is autonomy, a sense of control over how their time is spent, and connection, real relationships not built on comparison. The latter does not end with a bigger number. It ends with money finally becoming quiet enough in your head that something else gets to speak. You did not start this journey needing a fortune. You started it needing your nervous system to stop treating every financial decision like a threat. The fortune, if it comes, is almost incidental to that. The real climb was always happening inside your head, one recalibrated belief at a time, long before it ever showed up in an account balance, and it will keep happening whether or not you ever mention it to anyone standing next to you.